Hey, everybody, what's going on? Welcome to Climbing the Ladder, episode 13. I'm your host, ChanmanV, and joining us today is none other than Patrick Chobopeon O'Neill. How's it going, Pat?
It's pretty good. I hate to be like the millionth person to say this, but it's goddamn hot, and that's really all I've been thinking about for the past, 4 months.
Where are you at? Where are you located?
New York City.
Oh, okay. Wow, it's that hot in New York City. That's, I guess it is summertime. New York gets really, really hot.
New York gets really hot, really humid, and whatever. We can talk about that another time. I know. But,
exactly. Exactly. Guys, just so you guys know, John is running a little bit late. He had to bring his son to soccer, couldn't get out of it, so he'll be back in about 15-20 minutes. So he'll pop in here, and John has a lot of stuff to say today, so it'll be fun to have him on. And Ben is, if you can see, he's still is not back from Home Story Cup yet, so hopefully he'll join us again next week whenever he's back and ready and not jet lagged. But so it's just me and you to begin with, Pat. Should be fun. Lots to talk about today. We're going to be talking about esports journalism, and getting Pat's history or background in esports. But to start off, though, like every show that we do, we always start off with just any kind of misconceptions our guests think should be cleared up or think the community's got wrong. So we kind of want to start out with that, Pat. Are there any kind of misconceptions that you feel are running prevalent right now?
Off the top of my head, I think that people need to realize that people don't get paid for this generally. There's a lot of why don't we have independent esports journalism? Why aren't they saying this? Why aren't they saying that? And what they don't realize, or what a lot of people don't seem to realize, is that the people who are trying to do independent esports journalism the vast majority of them are not getting paid. And good journalism isn't cheap, and so it's a bizarre expectation to say that, unlike every other thing in the history of journalism, this free service where no one gets paid is going to be absolutely fantastic. They do their best, but there's only so much that they can do when it's volunteer. There's only so much you can do when you're investigating an industry where you hope to get a job soon. For a lot of people, journalism is your audition for a later job. That's not a good, that's never going to equal good journalism, really, or at least very, very rarely. So that's, the major misconception, I think, that ought to really be at the forefront of people's minds when they think about esports journalism.
Yeah, that's too bad, too, because, again, journalism, the basis of journalism, I feel like, is to really put it simply, is to really keep things honest, keep everybody informed of what's going on. And if it's heavily influenced by a lot of the politics that are going on in whatever industry that we're talking about, you can't really have good journalism, right? So it's kind of a little bit of a chicken and egg thing right now, right? Obviously there are a lot of topics that we'll probably get to further down, which we can just jump to some of them. I mean, I'll just ask you one of them right now. It's that what do you think needs to happen then? Do you think there needs to be a separate organization you're never going to be immune to the politics, right? But right. I guess, what are the first steps that need to happen? I mean, what is that, to get credibility enough that, you're not affected by, just the fear of, a lot of the politics that are going on?
There's a lot of different paths that I think a successful journalistic organization could take, but they all share one thing in common, and that's having money. I hate to be the guy who, rips the passion out of it and rips this mystique out of it, but at the end of the day, if we're talking about good journalism, you have to have money behind it for so many reasons. So whether you're ESFI or whether you're D Esports or whatever, journalistic organization that you're trying to build up, the way to do it is to build a solid staff that has a solid job and can focus on journalism rather than having it be their hobby or their audition for another job or a popularity contest or whatever it is. So getting investors involved in would be A, smart business, and B, would be good for the journalism. getting the community involved in funding it somehow would still end up getting money involved, and maybe could get the community, psyched up about it and have a stake in it. And just, injecting cash into esports journalism. I mean, I repeated myself 7 times there, but it's probably worth repeating. That's the way you make real journalism. Otherwise, it's just, you get lucky with the occasional article and whatnot, but you can expect really mediocre things otherwise. I mean, and let me point out, ESFI and all these guys doing volunteer work are doing their best, and I can't imagine doing any better for volunteer work. I absolutely can't. So don't take it as a poke at anyone, because I know I couldn't do any better. It's the situation that the journalism, niche is in as a whole that really sort of limits what can be done.
Right. I mean, do you think it's a quality issue with the volunteers, or is it purely like what you're saying, like, these volunteers are basically very reluctant to do any kind of pieces that would ruffle feathers, because they think they would, burn bridges or anything that, that might lead to some job in the future?
It's all of it. It's all of it. There's so many things that that limit how good journalism can be. Yes, you don't want to ruffle feathers. Yes, if you're an organization with limited money, if you're not the fucking New York Times, then all of a sudden problems of access come into play. Problems of necessary connections and the necessary knowledge, and you will essentially do okay. You'll do a couple of game recaps. You'll do maybe an article about the industry, but you'll never get really in there and do the sort of industry work that's critical of the industry. And I don't mean work that's wagging your finger at the industry, but work that is saying it is giving an honest and fair look and critical look at the industry. You'll never do that if you're a volunteer.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. It's definitely a challenge we're facing right now. But it's like, how do we get people to invest in journalism, I guess, without, it's one of these things where a lot of investors only look at, they have to have some kind of substance or statistics to be able to go off of, right, to make money, right? Let's just get it down to simple. It's back to money, right? They have to be able to make money to really invest. Yeah, so how do we do that, given that where we are right now, with the current environment? And, I mean, do we just have to be lucky, have some, private investor or some company or VC that's just, really, really has crazy belief in the potential of esports journalism, even though there's nothing to show for it right now? Or is there something else?
I mean, that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the question that many smart people have been wondering about since before Gottfrag. Many people have been wondering about, how do I get the money necessary to build a credible and strong journalistic institution. There are investors out there who want to do this. I know that for a fact. There are numerous investors, investors with feet in the esports industry, with already who are here and who want to invest in the journalistic part, which presents a lot of challenges, because if you have an investor who's already heavily involved in the esports industry, and then he invests in this, does that present some sort of conflict of interest? And that depends on the strength of depends on the strength of the journalism, really. I mean, there's this. I'll try and cut down the story really short, but good journalism isn't affected by the ad revenue or by who's investing. The ad department and the editorial department are kept separate, and it's completely possible, and there's many examples of it being done in the journalistic world. There's also many examples of the opposite happening, where the money coming in affects completely and utterly the words coming out. So that would have to, that's a trick. That's the trick of journalism, really. Once you get the money, can you deal with it in a responsible way? So there are many investors, or maybe not many, but there are a significant number of investors who want to invest in esports journalism. They see the potential. I think the potential is obvious, that there is money-making potential here if you do things the right way. There is that. There's also, like I said before, crowdfunding. There's Kickstarter. There's getting the community to put their money where their mouth is. The esports community has talked about, why don't we have esports journalism for so long, but hasn't really had anything done, and that's something that I want to do. So, hopefully we can get the community involved, we can get investors involved, and we can come out with a strong journalistic institution. And by the way, if and when that happens, once we get one really strong journalistic institution, it's going to open doors for other journalistic institutions. It's going to show the way that you don't need to be timid. You can be strong. There's going to be, avenues for potential profit there, and it could help, a great ESFI. If ESFI all of a sudden became this amazing institution, it would help other journalistic institutions, and on and on and on. So I think that in this way, the niche is so small and intermingled that yes, there's competition, but at the end of the day, right now, we're all, I think, should be focused on helping each other get higher, unless we want to keep doing 5-minute YouTube interviews and just put our audience to sleep.
Yeah, that's kind of the extent of it right now. But kind of, I guess, taking a step back, right, and maybe just kind of getting a little bit back, I guess, the back history or background on yourself. A lot of people don't realize that, a lot of people, have seen you around the community doing some interviews, and they're like, oh, Chobo, he's just, been around the community for, a couple of years or so, and they don't realize that you've been doing esports for a while now. So why don't you, give us a brief history of your esports experience?
My esports experience is long, and probably started in, I want to say 99, 2000, something like that, when someone in my junior high school lunchroom slipped me a burned copy of Brood War, or StarCraft Vanilla, actually. I put it in. I begged my mom to go get me to buy Brood War. We had to go into Manhattan for some reason to do it, as if they didn't sell Brood War in Brooklyn. And
Right.
and that happened. All of my friends all of a sudden picked up Counter-Strike, and this is in the early 2000s. This is before CPL really became CPL. This is before Gottfrag, and I got really big into those games. All of a sudden, I realized that Gur was a celebrity in Korea. All of a sudden, I realized that the Heaton was a celebrity at the CPL, and it got me really involved into that. I became smitten with it. It seemed so cool to me. And throughout the years, in the middle of the decade, I was out of it. I went to college, and I tried to do other things for a little while. I wasn't, hardcore into esports there. I came back, basically right after the middle of the decade, and I saw things, fall apart and then come back together. And then StarCraft 2 came out, and now we're in this era of esports. That's sort of the abbreviated version, but it gives you a good idea of what I've been through.
That's a really quick synopsis of it. Awesome.
If you need to know more about the last decade, I wrote a history of esports article, so I'll link you all to that.
That's true. Yeah, he does. He has it's to YouTube. Is it a YouTube video, or is it actually an article? I forget.
It's actually an article. I'll link it in chat.
Yeah. Definitely check that out, guys. He's again, Patrick's been doing a lot of whether it's blogs, or it's these articles, or it's YouTube videos. It's it's definitely all around. Just do a search on Chobopeon on Google, and you'll see probably the majority of them. So lots of good stuff out there. That Pat's been doing. Really getting even further down to the basics. How would you just describe just journalism to these? There's a lot of people that hear esports journalism this and esports journalism that. If you really get it down to the if you were to define it in the most simplistic form, what would you, how would you describe an esports journalist?
Wow, it's funny because right now and for a long time, the you can write a comment on your Twitter, sort of your slogan or whatever, and my slogan is "What the hell is an esports journalist?" So that sort of gives you a glimpse of how I feel about it. I don't know; it hasn't been defined, at least recently. There was esports journalism back with Gottfrag. There is esports journalism now, but what exactly it is, it's really hard to put into a concise definition. It's someone. I'll start with just trying to define journalism, which is another big topic. It's someone whose job it is, whose interest it is in, a business interest it is in, to expose truths in journalistic fashion. Obviously, I just used the word in the definition, but that's a whole other conundrum of being fair, of doing due diligence, of doing the hard work, And esports journalism, obviously your focus is on esports. Too often people take that as, well, if you do a game recap, you're an esports journalist. And, I think game recaps are great, and I think that's awesome content, and I hope, people do it. But there's a whole side of it focusing on the industry and on the business side of it that's not explored nearly enough. And with, millions of dollars flowing into the industry these days, it's something that has to be given another look. There's not a proper counterbalance to the industry right now, and that's something that we require.
Right. No, I think that's you put that really, really well there. Yeah, because a lot of folks just think that any kind of person doing interviews, YouTube videos with interviews with players or anything like that, they feel like is journalism, right? And in a way, you can interpret it that way. But for me, it's like it's more entertainment than it is, really raw journalism. So it's kind of that's the reason I kind of asked. I wanted to ask that question.
Yeah.
But yeah. So we talked a little bit about I guess. The business side, just what you felt like would be, a good, I guess, what we need to do, I guess, from a journalistic standpoint to kind of, make money. Do you think it needs, right now, you kind of mentioned this kind of collective effort that we need to have to make, this various just this journalism, esports journalism more established? Do you think it just needs to be one centralized hub right now? Like, does it need to just be ESFI, or does it need to be, whatever it is, D Sports or DE Sports?
The Skype just blew up there. My apologies, but
Okay.
I think that, like I said before, if one esports journalism outlet does well, it will help the other outlets. And if they're able to keep up with it, if they're able to raise their content to keep up with it, then all of a sudden you'll see that the content on the whole is getting better. A rising tide lifts all ships, and I think that would be the case here if one good outlet, and again, not that all outlets are bad right now, but if the content started to rise in quality from one outlet, it would show up in other outlets, the results of that. That's the competition, the need to survive. You'll need to raise your quality. Also, that's just being shown the way. That's people becoming used to that sort of journalism around the industry. There's a whole number of reasons as to why that would probably be the result, but I think that would be the result. So to answer the question, no, I don't think it needs to be one outlet. In fact, I think the best case scenario is that we don't have one outlet, because in the past when we did have one outlet, that outlet, no matter how big it was, no matter how trusted it was, no matter how awesome it was, I'm talking about Godfrag, it still got pushed around.
Mm-hmm. Right, I see.
So.
Okay. So recently, right? I know definitely with our last episode, obviously a lot of stuff came up, and we're probably going to hold off a lot of that until John gets here, because John wanted to talk about it. But I know a lot of people on Twitter was, obviously a lot of stuff came out in the last episode, right, with Gwyn.
Yeah.
And it was pretty much just up in the air, like who wanted to take this story, right? And, in the end, ESFI ended up taking the story and doing an article on it. But, there are a lot of people on Twitter that were wondering if you would take it, right, or Slasher would take it. And, definitely I was, I kind of was observing that conversation. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Why didn't you take the story?
So yeah, on Twitter, on Reddit, I saw immediately people said, Chobopeon Slasher, this is where you should be. And first of all, I'm like genuinely flattered that my name comes up when stuff like this happens. I want my name to come up. It's a good thing for me that my name came up. However, this goes back to the misconception of, first of all, I think people think that I work for GameSpot and that I get paid. I don't, and I don't. So there's that. And I think people, because of that, it adds to a larger misconception of, well, here's this guy who works in esports. He's a working journalist. He's a working full-time journalist. So why isn't he taking this big, story that people would love to see the truth of? I want to take that story. I want to do that story. I want to do it justice and come out with the truth and, come out with all sides and do the hard work. But again, I don't work for GameSpot. I don't get paid to do it, and it's just not something, the sort of story, or just those sorts of stories in general are not the things, not this type of thing that I think you can do on a volunteer basis and really succeed with, for reasons that we've talked about and reasons that I'm sure we'll talk about in the future. Rod, it's funny because in the Reddit post I said I don't want to speak for Rod, so I'll let him talk. I know he has his reasons of his own, and people took that as, well, Rod's like an evil shill, and he's not doing it because he's like, part of the Old Boys Club conspiracy Illuminati, which is not what I meant, although I totally realize why it looks like that in retrospect. Generally, Rod said, first of all, he didn't really care because he was ramping up for EVO, he was ramping up for Home Story Cup, he's ramping up for so many things. He didn't think it was a worthwhile story because he didn't think that what Gwyn was saying was the full truth of it. And so whatever you think of that, you think of that. But at the end of the day, if all we have is Rod, to cover the entirety of esports, and then you're surprised that things fall through the crack like this, I mean, obviously, Rod does what Rod does. Rod has to go to EVO. Rod has a lot of work to do. Rod has a lot on his plate, and there's so much happening in esports right now that, to be perfectly frank with you, Rod can't do it all. This goes back to having more than one outlet. As good as Rod is, as good as ESFI is, as good as any journalist is, they can't do everything on their own. A, because it's physically impossible, and B, because of the reality of the industry of making just of doing the actual work, of making those connections and of talking to the right people and this and that. God forbid something overlaps with the biggest fighting game tournament of the year,
Right.
Then all of a sudden the priorities are made and something is done and something else isn't, and all of a sudden someone's a new member of the Illuminati. However you feel about Rod's work, I'm pretty sure he didn't do this like nefariously. He has work to do, and he can't be responsible for all of esports journalism, which is another, that's another thing that just signals to me that, I hope I can one day soon, and I hope to talk about exactly what I want to do here on the show. I hope that one day I can be a full-time esports journalist, because that's the only way that it can be consistently good journalism. If you are a volunteer journalist, as I have been for a long time, and I've been paid in the past, but whatever, I know that it's only going halfway, if that. So Rod does his best. Rod is only human, and I do my best, but I'm not paid. So.
Right. I got it. Okay. I kind of wanted to ask you, in your opinion, right, in the last year, what do you think's been the biggest, what do you think's been the biggest story, like, from a journalistic standpoint, or the most important story so far?
That's a big question. That's the kind of question I have to really ponder.
Yeah, I didn't include it in the topic, sorry. It's kind of hitting you with a surprise question here.
No, I mean, I guess that's how that depends on really how you want to sort of take that question. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you sort of the stories that I wish I could have done over the past year. How about really investigating? I really want to investigate the way that sponsorships work in esports. How much sponsors have control over teams, and how much teams have control over sponsors, and how that all intermingles, and what the result is, the net result of that is on the esports scene. I want to talk about, I wish I could do a real investigative, well, not investigative, but a real in-depth article on what's happening right now in Korea in terms of the end of Brood War and what that means for League of Legends, what that means for StarCraft 2. I wish we could talk more about what happened at MLG at the end of the year when they fired that group of people, when I quit, and when a bunch of their plans were turned around because of monetary reasons. I mean, that's a giant story that was, like, if you're talking in terms of real journalistic importance, that's something that really wasn't put out there at all. I mean, I posted that I quit, and I think that was probably the most viewed thing about the whole thing, period. And so, and I feel like, I know that it was investigated, I know that people looked into it, but nothing really came out of it, and I think that that's something that really could be looked into in terms of MLG is so important to esports. We need to look at how the business is run. We need to look at major milestones in the business, why giant decisions like that are made, and what it means for the future, not only of the business, but how about the future of the people who want to work at MLG. MLG courts and speaks to people within the esports community all the time. These people should probably know about MLG's past. And let me also point out that I'm not saying MLG is this giant monolithic terrible organization who cut the balls off of all the employees that they fired. But I do think that it was a major event. I do think that there are questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, but the questions that you're talking about that need to be answered, I mean, they can only be answered by MLG themselves, right? And I do remember a little bit of during that time, and Sundance was trying to answer questions, but there's only so much he can answer, like, or they're gonna actually release to the public, right? And if you're not, I mean, can you get that information really from them? I guess. I mean.
Yes, you can. There are people within MLG who do talk about this stuff. A. B. There's publicly available financial information that ought to be. It's publicly available, but a responsible journalist generally doesn't just copy and paste it to Reddit and say, have what you will, guys. A responsible journalist will put it into context and then go get comments from MLG about it. Right. So yes, you can put this out there. It's certainly within the possibility.
Okay. Yeah, that would have been a pretty sweet story.
Yeah.
Definitely, for sure. But obviously, just the
ever into that. No. Would that put the journalist on the wrong side of MLG? Very possibly. So all of a sudden, the weight on the don't do it side for a journalist becomes pretty serious. And what's the weight on the do it side for them?
Yeah.
You have to really think. I mean, it obviously depends. Varies journalist to journalist, but I don't blame anyone for not doing that story. We really need, because under the current environment, it becomes, sort of unrealistic to expect someone to do that sort of investigation and publication. Mm-hmm. But you hope that that's the goal. That's where we can get.
Right. Sorry, the stream guys just kind of went down. I'm having a little ISP blips right now, so it's kind of annoying. But is the stream back up here? Let's see.
I refreshed it. It seems to be all right.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Gosh, yeah, this ISP sometimes, how it goes. It's crazy. But okay, awesome. One thing I wanted to see, the next thing I kind of wanted to ask you about is, I guess we can just kind of go in like your involvement with the executives, right? And you hosting that show. What was your big, I guess, motivation into? I mean, it's a great show. Like I watch every episode, with Jason, with you guys and Jason and Odie, and you guys do great work there. So I kind of wanted to ask you, as a journalist, like what does what was your motivation in doing that show?
Well, first of all, I mean, not as a journalist, but just as a fan who's been around and was all about Counter-Strike when Complexity started. Mm-hmm. When Jason Lake instant messages you and says, I have a project and you'd be perfect for, you sit up and listen. And as a journalist, it is focused on the business end of things, which is something that no one else does, never mind on a regular basis, but almost at all. No one else really focuses on the business side of esports. So there's so much there to talk about, a unspeakable amount to talk about. We've barely scratched the surface. I know we haven't been around in a couple of weeks, and that's because these guys have families, and it is July and June, and there's been a lot of events. So we've been tripped up in that regard, but hopefully very soon we get back to it. I have no family, so all I do is sit around and think about when we're going to get back to the executives. That's what my life revolves around. Not really, but I do love the executives. I do love doing it. So, I mean, I did it because it's a huge gap that we could fill. I thought that the three of us could fill it in a unique way. I thought that I had been around and had experience and had journalistic training that I thought I could bring to bear. I think that Jason's connections and ability to bring the right kind of guests on the show are unquestionable. The kind of guests he's had on the show and the things he gets them to talk about, I think are fantastic. There's obviously we don't talk about everything I want to talk about, but that's not because Jason tells me no. That's mostly because he has so many business questions, and he has his own direction for the show he wants, and the show already with that goes hours and hours, and we can't do an Executives Part 2 every week because then Jason has to go pick up his kids from school. But So and Odie has his own European perspective, and when his mic's not being too low, he really brings a great addition to the show, I think. And guys like Turble, guys like Alex Garfield, and guys like Total Biscuit, they all have their unique perspectives that I think have not been really delved into at all from a journalistic point. So I think that no one's doing it, and it's such a valuable thing to have done.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, again, I really, really enjoy the show, and I know a lot of people that watch this show are the same way. I mean, they definitely enjoy the show and what you guys bring, especially with those guests. I mean, like you said, those are pretty much all the CEOs and top execs of a lot of the big organizations in esports, right? So definitely getting their outlook on things is very enlightening, and because you don't get a chance to really talk to these folks, right? You see them quoted maybe every once in a while in different articles and that type of thing, but you never actually see them sit down and talk. I mean, you see Sundance all the time, but you don't see guys like Alex sitting down and
well, you see Sundance all the time, but let's be honest, you see Sundance talking to people who want to get in good with Sundance or who are afraid of really sticking it to Sundance. And not that there's anything to, like, again, Sundance isn't Angel Munoz. There's not this, evil, I keep lately saying the words evil genius. He's not like a maniacal, guy with these, evil machinations or machinations, but there are questions that ought to be asked, and the people who are supposed to ask them are either, God bless in control, but the guy is not a journalist, obviously. He'd be the first to admit it. And God bless JP, the guy's also not a journalist. He's a MLG employee who hosts a couple of good shows, but he's not going to be like, hey, Sundance, what the fuck is up, And even the small shows with the people who aren't employed directly by the teams or the leagues, these people want press passes. These people want access, and they're generally not going to stick it to MLG unless there is a really good reason for them to do so, not in terms of the story, but in terms of cost benefit. So, you see Sundance because he tweets like a maniac, and you see him on these shows, but I don't think you see him in sitting down to the sort of interviews or, talking about the sorts of stories that maybe would be ideal for journalism. And that's not Sundance's responsibility. There's no blame on Sundance for that. That's a reality of the state of esports journalism, and that's something that we hope we can fix soon.
Right. Good point. Definitely good points there. So next thing I want to talk about is why don't we talk a little bit about that project you're talking about and the whole Kickstarter thing, and let you have kind of let all the viewers and the community know about this and hopefully support this.
Sure. So like I've been talking about, the major thing holding back esports journalism, I would say, is the lack of independent, full-time journalists, meaning people who actually get paid to do their job, people who aren't using it as a hobby or an audition for another job, but people who actually want to be journalists and can do that sort of work for an extended period without suddenly realizing, wait a minute, there's no money to be made here. And we talked about how we can do that. We talked about investors, we talked about sponsors, and we talked about crowdfunding. We talked about the community stepping up, putting their money where their mouth is, finally standing behind all these "Where's the Esports Journalism" posts and supporting it. So with that in mind, I started a Kickstarter that actually just got approved by Kickstarter a couple of hours ago, thank God, before the show. And it is basically the esports reporter. The idea is to raise $6,000 over 30 days. Here's hoping for that, to be able to produce 10 episodes of content in which I engage in in-depth journalism about the esports industry, about questions that need answering, about people who need to be spotlighted, and things of that nature, bringing real journalistic training to bear, bringing a full-time job as a foundation. I'm about to click post on StarCraft Reddit, so I like to say that if and when the community turns on me for trying to do this, I mean, this is me saying to the StarCraft community, put your money where your mouth is. If this is something you really want, support it. I think I've come up with a great model for it. I think I do have, investors, that I'm talking to, people who want to put more money into it. I do have a great content delivery plan set up, and I think that this is a good way to get that independent esports journalism that everyone talks about, that everyone wants, that's this big pie in the sky. This is a good way to make it a reality. So just click submit.
All right,
Everybody,
let's do this.
everybody, yeah. If everybody in the chat could please go to StarCraft New and upvote this, I would love you forever. I'll link it in a second. And yeah, I mean, this is something that I'm going all in on right now. This is something I really want to do. So please help me out and check it out.
All right, checking it out right now, upvoting it right now, and looks like John's here. But yeah, guys, definitely go check this out. Again, if you guys haven't been on Kickstarter, just to give you a little quick description of the site, it's a great site. It's basically a site that's been around for quite some time, and I remember when it first started, it was actually pretty junky looking. I'll just be honest with you, but it's kind of gone a long way since. And what it does is it allows for folks that want to start projects or want to start even little businesses, right? And it allows you to kind of present your what project you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish, and it can be anything from like making a game to what Pat's trying to accomplish here to anything, writing a book. And what it does is allows you to just create a project on Kickstarter, and just you set a goal for what amount, like I guess the pledge amount you want to reach, and folks can just donate to it. A lot of folks get on Kickstarter and they actually are interested in all these projects, and they donate to it, or not donate to it, they pledge to it. And
I would say also, after you're done pledging to mine, you guys should go check out Kickstarter and browse it, because there are some really amazing projects that have gone on. I mean, I can't even talk about the number of projects, the cool video games that are being done that sort of get people to go outside of the traditional publishing world and say, listen, this video game is not going to be the next Madden, but people want it. It's fucking brilliant. Put your money where your mouth is. And all of a sudden they have $3.5 million to do it. So I can't wait.
Sorry to interrupt. I know I just got here. First of all, apologize to the viewers for that. What's the link to your Kickstarter? Because this is really interesting. Kind of sucks, actually, to be honest with you, because CSN is about ready to launch a Kickstarter as well. You beat us to it, damn it.
Woo! All right.
Well, Pat just linked
It's a good thing. I mean, if you're doing it and we're doing it,
yeah, we'll get more
different things. I mean, ours is obviously for something different, but I'm really curious to see the what. And obviously, I missed it. What is your?
Oh, he just literally launched it. Like, the Kickstarter started like a couple hours ago, but the Reddit article he just launched.
You want me to run down real quick what it is again for you, John?
Yeah, just 2 minutes. Just give me the quick.
Sure. So the main problem facing esports journalism today, I think, there's many of them, but the main problem is that there are no full-time independent esports journalists. And to stand up and be a real journalist, you need to be full-time. You need to have that solid foundation from which to work, or else you're just a hobbyist, or else you're just auditioning for a future job. I mean, I've gone over a number of the problems that that sort of volunteer work presents, or else you're just working for a team or a league, and that's a whole different bucket of problems. So I'm trying to get the esports community to sort of put their money where their mouth is, because how many times have you heard, where's the independent esports journalism? And I think that putting their money where their mouth is, supporting this, will go a long way to do that. I have a really cool content delivery system that I'm working on. I mean, by that I mean a really cool bunch of people I'm working with to get that to work. I have investors talking about it. So hopefully this sort of thing can put another full-time esports journalist on the beat and offer sort of in-depth, investigative, and most important, independent perspective for journalism.
Okay.
Are we talking about like videos, or are we talking about live?
Yes, there will be YouTube videos.
Okay.
For now, I mean, depending on who knows what the future will bring in terms of what will be the best way to deliver this. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
So this would be you. This is your project.
This is my project. I've got couple of other people that I'm talking about jumping on. It really depends on the sort of funding that I get at that point. I don't want to promise someone a paid position and then all of a sudden be like but it's me first and foremost as the director of the project, and if I can get more paid esports journalist work, then I will absolutely do that.
Right. What's and this is actually coming up in the chat that I just noticed, but what's to prevent people from not talking to you?
I mean,
go ahead.
In terms of what's to prevent people from not talking to me, I mean, in terms of I've been around for a couple of years. I have pretty extensive connections compared to most other quote-unquote esports journalists. I guess, I mean, there could be an esports blackout on me, and it's certainly possible, I suppose. In terms, I mean, I don't know what to say to that. I'll do my best. I went to school for journalism. I've been around the esports community for a long time. I think I know how to navigate it. I'm not going to go out there and start putting everyone on blast without considering the fact that I want to talk to these people to further the goal.
Okay.
But if the entire esports industry all of a sudden has a blackout on Chobopeon, maybe that's a whole other story that I can work on.
Yeah, that's true. That's a lot to say about that if that ever happened. But yeah, I mean that's always going to be the case for anybody.
And yes,
right?
what Ferguson says, I think that if I have community support, it's the sort of thing where everyone who supports this will take a stake in it. And if all of a sudden on really important things people aren't talking to me, I think they'll feel obligated to do it to some extent, because this is in large part a community effort.
Okay.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, John. Unfortunately, gone through a lot of topics, but
that's okay.
But the topic list. You can see the topic list there, and definitely one of the things I wanted to talk, just to discuss briefly, especially with Pat on the show, is I know you wanted to say a few things about this past week, right? Kind of stemming from our last episode.
Oh, yeah. You mean me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely some things I know you wanted to say. So.
Yeah, and I thought about it. I sit I'm driving back from taking my son to his soccer stuff, or driving there, and I'm just sitting there thinking, how best to approach this. Obviously, I'm wearing my Gigabyte Esports LAN shirt, which is nice, And I actually just put it on this morning just to have a T-shirt on, and then I thought when I put it on, I thought to myself, geez, what if I wear this on the show? What are people going to think? I mean, am I going to get a bunch of hate? Are people going to think that I'm trying to, just support this so-called failed event and whatnot? And the truth is, it's a T-shirt. One, it's something to wear, and two, I don't really give an F. I mean, this is. The event was the event. Some of the stuff that happened at the event obviously did get exaggerated a little bit. The thing is that last week when Gwen was on the show, if I had heard anything that I felt was just an outright lie, or that Gwen was, just going off the deep end with conspiracy theories, I would have jumped in and said something. I mean, obviously when he talked about the Hydra thing, which if you watch the video, you see my eyes practically roll into my head, because I was like, is he really just going crazy here about the whole Hydra thing, which was really probably not obviously the best thing for him to do, because it fueled a lot of people that already have hate towards EG, and they got everyone thinking about the whole EG thing. But at that point, I made the point to say, hey, that was just Hydra being Hydra. I don't really think that EG had anything to do with it. I think what happened was things just got out of hand. I mean, anytime you put anything on Reddit, and I really don't care if there's anyone here that just loves Reddit, Reddit fanboys, but Reddit is the biggest cesspool of a website in everything, and it is. It's just
I'm on board.
You mean it's not esports journalism?
No, I mean you're sitting behind you're sitting behind a name tag, and you can spew out anything that you want, and it's amazing how easily things get derailed on that website. Had Gwen said anything that I thought was an outright lie, I would have corrected him. But Gwen was passionate about what he believed to be the truth. The ESFI article, at first when I read it, I was like, oh man, are you kidding me? This just came off as like a he said, she said thing, and technically I still believe that. I don't think that there was much new information to offer in that. The problem is that no matter the real problem, I mean, there's lots of problems, but one of the problems is that no matter what was said or who said it or whether part of it was true, all of it was true, is that it just turns into this huge, big cesspool of hate. Hating on EG or hating on Gwen, and I think everyone was passionate in what they were saying and what they were doing. And I don't think Gwen wasn't trying to chastise anyone or to. I mean, I guess he was a little bit, but he wasn't really. He wasn't saying, and I think people didn't didn't even watch the video. Some of them, he wasn't saying that EG was the reason for this. I think that a lot more needed to be said. If those were his opinions and he wanted it to be heard, he should have had the opportunity to say everything. We had an hour with him and an hour we needed to get to Carmack, so we kind of cut him off before he could say some things about other organizations, about other things that were happening that prevented the event from being a so-called stream success, which is a whole other bullshit story in itself. But the event itself was definitely a success. I don't know. To be honest with you, I'm talking in circles right now because it's so frustrating. It's just so frustrating that ESFI is doing the best that they can with what they have. I actually thought the article was pretty well written. I didn't think that it gave us any new information. And then, of course, it just turned all the hate to Gwen, and everyone did what they could for damage control, and it put a lot of hate on the staff from GESL. There's just a lot going on. I mean, I could sit here all day and talk about everything that I read yesterday and some of the bullshit that was spewed out, but it's just not worth it. But to say that this stuff doesn't happen in esports is just being completely blind. To say that there's not people that don't want to see, events be a success, it's just bullshit. Was there enough evidence there? Probably not. Was there some circumstantial evidence? Probably. Did that information get out there? No. I mean, that article missed a lot of what Gwen wanted to say about his belief that there were other organizations involved in this, and that none of that got in there. And I actually messaged Brent from ESFI and I said, why was none of that in there? And he said to me, well, because there was no proof of it. And at first I thought, yeah, but you put a lot of other stuff in there that really you didn't offer any proof. There was no, there was no logs or anything. It was just what he said and then against what he said. And so where was the proof and all of that? I mean, if you're gonna put in what people said, why not put everything that Gwen said in the article? And I thought about that, last night, and then when I woke up this morning, I thought a little bit more about it. I thought, I think ESFI did the right thing. They tried to put in as much information as they could that they could back up. If they couldn't back up part of a story, if something that Gwen said didn't make sense, or they couldn't connect the dots to, they weren't going to put it in there because it would have just made for larger and more pitchforks. I guess, people hunting for something that maybe wasn't there. I really don't know. My head, it just about exploded yesterday with just all this shit going on. And I feel bad for Gwen. I feel really bad for the GSL crew because they've had to do a lot of damage control, instead of enjoying, how the event went for them. I really feel bad for the community. And I feel bad for journalists that are trying to do something in esports, to make a name for themselves, to learn, to offer the esports community something that's definitely needed. I mean, all these people bitching about whether this person, can write, or why don't you just stop writing and things like this. Why don't they do it? If they think they can do better at writing or better at finding the information, then why don't they do it? I don't know. Reddit just turned everything into a big cesspool of hate for everyone, and it's just frustrating.
Yeah, I think I'd probably agree with that too. Pat, actually, what was your take on the whole thing? I mean, just being an observer of all of it.
My take was, because I actually talked to Gwen soon after it happened. My take mostly was, man, I wish I could spend some time and look into this. Which is why when my name was brought up and Slash's name was brought up, I was like, well, here's why I can't do it. Here's why I would like to. But I don't know. I mean, John seems to sum it up well. I wish I could look into it more, and maybe I'll be able to. I don't really have anything more to add, though.
The thing that needs to be noticed, the thing that people need to concentrate more on, I think, is that there were some things that were fishy, I guess. There were some things that just didn't seem right with what was happening and why certain things were happening. Granted, the GSL crew, including myself, obviously when these things were happening, it was like, are you effing kidding me? Is Riot seriously going to run an update on Sunday of a tournament, and they never run updates on Sunday? And so instantly, because of all the other things that had happened, it was like, oh, this is, I bet somebody, somebody in the conversation, said, oh, I bet so and so called him, and it may have just been, people saying things, and just being completely upset about this. And that probably fueled a lot of the conspiracy thoughts. But to say that nothing happened, to say that there was nothing, that no one did anything or no one was trying to, that's just asinine, because it happens in all aspects of business. I mean, shit, my 14-year-old son plays in a premier soccer league, and we all know about, parents of kids that play in sports. You think that drama's bad. Try looking at the drama from the point of the coaches that can't stand each other from the other clubs, the clubs trying to trump each other, the clubs trying to sabotage another club's success. It happens all the time. And for this industry, or for this community to think, oh, this stuff doesn't happen, or it's just asinine. It's just stupid, because it happens all the time.
So, I mean, the fact that it happens all the time, then really
doesn't make it right.
Well, okay, that was kind of what I was looking at. I mean, if it's just normal behavior, then is it worth making a big deal out of? I mean,
it should be made a big deal out of. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. But you're not going to get answers because people just aren't going to talk, because this industry is so new that everyone's trying to get in for themselves. And actually, the industry is not new. For a lot of people, it's new, and so they're all about, I got to make a name for myself. I want to do something in esports, and I want to be a personality. I want to ride the coattails of some team, or I want to join some organization so I can say I did this. I mean, everyone wants to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone's trying to get a little piece of the pie right now, and the pie keeps getting a little bit bigger, and everyone keeps jumping in and trying to get a bigger piece of it, and so these things are going to happen. But it does need to come out that there are calculated efforts by people and organizations to see that other people don't succeed. It's like when someone says, you're always blowing out my candle to make yours burn brighter. I mean, that's the sort of thing. I mean, instead of them just doing their thing and not worrying about what everyone else is doing, there are people in this industry that would rather worry about what other people are doing and try to make it bad for them. And it does need to be exposed. Some of these things definitely need to be talked about more. Every time something gets controversial in esports, we immediately want to shut it down, like, oh, no, let's not bring that up. Let's not dig any deeper there.
Right, it's called drama, like dismissively.
Yeah,
Right.
They're like, oh, this is, exactly, they're like, oh, this is just drama, like the Destiny thing. I mean, you want to get to the bottom of the story, and find out exactly what happened. I mean, it's amazing that on Reddit there's still people that think that Azrael was actually brought in to replace Destiny. That's not true at all. There's actually people that believe that, because it got out initially that there was like 4 or 5 emails. That it was only 4 or 5 emails that caused that whole thing. People put all the blame on Gigabyte, and I can tell you it wasn't just Gigabyte. In fact, it wasn't Gigabyte initially at all. But this stuff's just going to keep going on because nobody is getting to the bottom of it, and you're just not going to. I mean, even ESFI, I can tell you this for a fact. Even ESFI has stories that they'll never release. They're just not going to let go of them, because it would be it would be a business suicide for them. And I'll be completely honest with you myself. There are things that I could say. There are things that I could share from 10 years of experience, things that go back 6 years ago from organizations that are still around today that I could say. And people are say, oh, prove it, show me logs. You know what? Fuck it, I can't prove everything. I'm not going to give you enough evidence that's going to change your mind because there are too many fanboys out there. There's too many people that just want to not see it happen or can't believe that it's actually the case. But do I hold back on saying some of those things? Absolutely. I have a business to run too. And you know, I don't want to put my business in jeopardy. And that's kind of an unfortunate thing that we can't do that. But you know what? It happens in business. It happens in life. And we just we have to accept a little bit of it. But somebody has to get the stories out. Somebody has to not be scared to take the risk. And I think Gwen was at a point, in fact, I can tell you for sure, when at 2 a.m. in the morning when we were done on Sunday, we went to have breakfast, the CSN crew, and here comes Gwen walking in all by himself, and I think it was a Perkins, or maybe it was a Denny's, God forbid, I think it was a Denny's. And he comes walking in, and he sits down at the table, and he's pretty fired up at this point. You know, the event's over and everything, and you believe it or not, you get your second wind about 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're all fired up. And he was pretty fired up, and he was pretty passionate about going out there and going out in a flame, you know, in a blaze of glory. Be like, you know, I'm gonna expose it. I'm gonna say it like it is. I'm gonna let people know. Did he have a lot of facts to back it up? I mean, did he have a lot of, you know, evidence to back it up? No. Apparently not according to this community. I mean, he needed logs and everything like this. But did he have these experiences? Did he actually go through some of this? Did he see some of this? Did he look at it and go, boy, that just doesn't seem right. That seems fishy. Absolutely. And so he had an opinion, and he was fired up, and he said, you know, I'm probably done casting. I'm not going to cast anymore. And so I'm just going to come out and say what I think with some problems and some things that need to be addressed. And he got exactly what he knew he was going to get from it. And so, but I think he was hoping to make some waves and to try to expose some things that are pretty shitty in this industry. And it kind of backfired a little bit. And there's definitely some things that he exaggerated about. But at the time I didn't know. You know, I wasn't privy to the budget, so I didn't know all the budget issues. I shared with Brent from ESFI. He asked me. I shared with Brent some of my thoughts on some of the things. I shared with him, you know, what I knew. But those are just things that I knew. You know, I can't offer up evidence, and so I said, you know, just kind of try to leave my name out of it, because at this point, it's just basically, it's hearsay. But I don't know. And that's all I have to say about it. Let's move on to something else.
Cool.
John, let's talk after the show then. I would love to. I mean, honestly, let's have a Skype chat or something whenever you have some free time. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole goal of what I'm doing. So, I mean, sure. I would love to. And
I can assure you. I mean, you're going to get. There's going to be times where I'm just going to not have a comment on something. It's very, very few times. I mean, there's no one. I can't think of anyone in the industry, not Sir Scoots, not Sundance, that will tell you exactly what it is, what the situation is. Those guys they're too wrapped up in their brands, as they should be, and there's too much marketing behind what they do. They're not going to just come out and say it. I mean, there's only one person I know of that will just come out and say whatever he wants, and that's Too Good. And that could be why he gets 7,000 people watching this show. But for the most part, I'll say it like it is. I'll say it like I know it. And I've told ESFI, and I'll tell anyone the same thing. If you find something on CSN that bothers you, if we're doing something that doesn't make sense, if we run an event and there's some fishy stuff going on, you better expose it. You better let it out there. Because if we just keep hiding behind those things, we're just going to keep doing them. We're going to get more powerful, and we're going to have more ability to dictate what you say and what you can't say, and that's bullshit. That's not going to get us anywhere in this industry at all. So, anyway, yeah, I'd love to talk.
Preach it. All right.
Sounds good. The next thing, I think really the next part, I guess, topic or piece of the show I wanted to kind of go through is it's really more the brainstorming part of it. And I know a lot of the stuff that we've already been talking about is a little bit of that already. And Pat, you mentioning your project and all is kind of along these lines. But what are some other things that you feel like might be great projects or things that you don't have time to do right now that maybe some of the folks that are watching the show might be able to endeavor. Maybe it's folks that actually have funding, that kind of thing. And that's really the whole point of this topic, is to kind of get ideas flowing.
Right.
Any kind of dream kind of project that, not dream,
Sure.
but realistic, but
Sure. So I spent some time thinking about exactly what I wanted to do with this, and I had a couple of different ideas. And one of the ideas was pretty obvious to me because I used to do SC Center and I used to do StarCraft Report at MLG, and doing regular esports news shows, daily or Monday through Thursday, regular esports video shows would be, I think, if you had the right foundation, like you had the right people and a bit of money behind it, would be great because there's so much going on in esports right now that, frankly, I can't keep up with it all. I don't know if there's, like, some diehard fans out there who really know what's happening in Dota 2, LOL, StarCraft 2. I can barely keep up with what's happening in StarCraft 2. In fact, I can't. And so a good regular video content, an esports center type of show, I think, it's not the hard-hitting journalism sort of thing, but I think in terms of projects with potential, something that people want, something that in terms of getting fans on board without esports being overwhelming, I think that that's something that, if done right, would work.
Yeah, it'd be like exactly what you were doing before, like the SC Center, basically the sports center of esports.
Right, which I had to stop because you can't work that much on a show without getting paid. It's impossible.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I think that would be a great idea, and some folks out there, that'd be cool.
Can Patrick, can you paste the link to your Kickstarter in Skype for me?
Sure.
Kickstarter.
I'm actually going to learn from it and see what we can do better in our Kickstarter program.
You can't do anything better. It's the perfect Kickstarter.
Did you put a video on yours?
Yes.
Did you make a video? Yeah, apparently that's like a big deal. Like make a video.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very nice, dude.
Here, I'm gonna link it.
Already 935. I'm gonna make sure we get ours up soon then.
Dollars? Nice, man. Here we go. I'm gonna link this here, guys. This is the direct link to the Kickstarter. Patrick's Kickstarter project. Definitely pledge what you can. Again, try to support his cause. I think it's, I think it's a great cause. So probably be doing the same too, dude. Let's see. Anything else you want to bring up, John? I know you missed on some of the other topics. Any kind of journal? Anything you want to ask Pat about esports journalism?
I want to ask Pat straight up. Has there been a story before, whatever organization that you've been at, that you've wanted to put out there, and you've been told no?
At MLG, no. But I know that people will. It's funny because of sort of like I know that MLG they play for keeps when it comes to PR, to say the least. So I know that some people get in trouble with MLG, which is funny because I've heard they've gotten in trouble for things that I was saying on MLG TV as an MLG employee. I will say now there are things that I would like to report on that I don't think I could do without it being my job. And so, I'm starting this project. I definitely have stories that I really want to go after. I've never been expressly told, no, don't do that. So, at least not that I can remember. I do know that I have been at organizations where that has happened, though. And, yeah, like you said, there are organizations, every organization, really, that's ever done any kind of thing that resembles journalism has had stories shut down because, this is too much. This doesn't make business sense. The money department and the editorial departments in pretty much every esports business are the same department, or they are very incestuous. So it happens all the time. No one's ever shook their finger at me directly, but I've been there when people have had the fingers shaken at them.
Okay.
so to speak.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. Why don't we do some Q&A with the viewers? I'm sure a lot of people have some comments about stuff discussed today. So, viewers out there, if you want to actually call in, you can add me on Skype. My Skype ID is ChanmanV, and I'll pull you into the call once you add me. Otherwise, just start asking your questions on the stream chat, and we'll start answering them.
Be careful of those ESFI staffers who are going to call in to troll.
Yeah, I know who's in here. Hubbub's in here. Who else is in here? Let's see. Do you see any other ESFIs in here? I don't know. They could be not logged in. So, where's Kurt?
They're in here. I know
need
they're
Kurt.
in here.
We need Kurt. Where's Kurt? Shoot, let me see. Kurt's our regular. He's our regular call-in.
I like it.
Okay. See any questions? Yeah, just start asking questions, guys. Any questions about
Oh, one of the questions that I know that people have been asking on Reddit and in the chat, and I haven't answered because I can't type out an answer and still pay attention to what's going on in the show, is the same question that John Clark asked, which is, how will you get access? I know that someone asked it here, and the guy from EG asked it on Reddit. And again, no one can prevent, especially in a small industry like this, no one can prevent organizations from blacking me out. But I am bringing formal journalism training to the fray here. I am bringing real familiarity with the esports community and the industry, real experience. I would say I know how to navigate it in terms of journalism better than almost anyone, with a few exceptions. And so it really comes down to doing the job well. Can I stop a complete esports blackout on Chobopeon if the esports Illuminati wanted to do that? No, but I think a good journalist knows how to deal with the industry, knows how to conduct themselves, and knows how to sort of relate to them without letting it compromise the news that comes out. Obviously that's the big trick of journalism, and I wouldn't go so far as to say I'll be perfect at it. No one is. But I think that it's completely plausible. I think it's completely doable, and I think it's done in the greater world of journalism all the time. So I think it's a good question. I think it's a great question, one that I have been thinking about and continue to think about, but I think that it is something that can be done as I go on, and I think it's something that has been done. People want to talk. We talk about how no one wants to talk about this or that because of it's bad business sense, and that's true. They won't come out and just make a Reddit post about issue X, Y, and Z. But if someone comes to them who is a good journalist, someone who they trust, someone who they think conducts themselves well, I promise you they want to talk. Esports is not a bunch of zip lips. Esports has people who talk, and especially will talk if the right person approaches them. So,
right. Zero Cool has an interesting question. It says, Pat, it's Jeb. How are you on anonymous attributions? Do people feel comfortable? Do people feel comfortable giving you anonymous quotes?
I know that people feel comfortable giving me anonymous quotes. For anonymous attributions, I would say they have to be. I in general will do my best to avoid any anonymous attributions. Generally, the anonymous contributors to stories are of most use when you use them to jump to another source, or you use them to build your background knowledge, or use them to build the story in general. But there are plenty of exceptions, and I'm sure someone will point back to this if and when I do use anonymous attributions. But in general, I will do my best to avoid anonymous attributions. I mean, we'll see what the environment out there is like in terms of going on record with me. I don't love anonymous attributions, but also in terms of industry journalism. If you look at the tech industry and you look at all these other industries that have niche journalism that is popular within the industry and popular within that specific community, and the biggest analogy I can think of is either sports or the tech industry. Anonymous attribution comes up all the time, maybe too much. I think it can be useful if it's done responsibly. Obviously, that's sort of a vague response. I would have to come up with a specific instance to really come down on a yes or no. But the key is to engage that kind of stuff really responsibly. Don't use it willy-nilly, because not only is it bad journalism, but it'll probably just backfire in terms of people really understanding the story completely, which is my entire job, to sort of articulate the truth of what's happening in the industry. So, you know,
put all my effort into, and we'll see what happens.
Yes.
I don't care if it's you or someone else.
Yeah.
If that's what your goal is, and you end up doing it, and you put 100% into it, then you'll reap the benefits of that.
Yeah, Slasher didn't. Fuck Slasher didn't end because of anything to do with the show itself. I didn't quit because of anything to do with the content itself. Fuck Slasher ended, and I left because MLG had a total about face in their board meetings and about where funding was going. And so everyone, well, a lot of people from content got fired in general.
Right.
It wasn't because Slasher was saying things they didn't want said. Although, that I'm sure that passed through the minds of MLG, of the MLG boardroom, saying, why are we? I know that for SC Center, some people on the board were like, why are we paying this guy to talk about other leagues? To which I respond, you fucking brought me on to talk about other leagues. That's a whole different thing. The point is, though, that's not why these things ended. It wasn't because Slasher touched a nerve with these guys in terms of hitting on a story that they didn't want talked about. And I went on SC Report every day and was like, Jesus Christ, the MLG format is terrible. Every day, I never heard anything about it, and I'm glad I didn't. And I respect the people I worked with at MLG that much more for never coming up to me and saying, what the fuck. So it was more about just like what John said and just like what I just said, total funding, total where the funding's going and where they think it could make, where it could go, and to go further.
Right. All right, Sam. Thanks for the question, bud.
No problem.
We got actually JP wants to call in here. So.
Who?
JP, hold on to your butts, John.
JP McDaniel?
No.
Oh,
no.
JP. Different JP.
Oh, I was like, on Reddit, someone said I was a shill and known mouthpiece for JP. So.
Well, is it JP a shrill for MLG? What's it matter? What's the difference?
We're all shills. We're all shills.
We're all
man.
shills, exactly. JP,
It's
you
not
there?
JP. It's not JP as in JP McDaniel.
No, I know,
It's-
and we're all disappointed for that. Trust me.
Aw, Patrick.
Oh, welcome.
All right, bud. You got
Anyway.
a question?
Yes. Me and Cameron, Famsy, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, were discussing over Twitter the meaning of an esports journalist because it's a very vague term. Honestly speaking, it is a very vague term, and when you get down to it, there's only really two well-known people. One that stands out the most is Slasher, and then you, Chobo. But if you look through it, then you don't find anyone else. So what would you define as a well-known journalist, for example?
You want me to give examples of well-known esports?
No, like...
Well, how would I define esports?
Yeah,
journalists?
yeah.
What makes, I think what he's saying is, what makes one person's journalistic view more esports related than someone else's, or better in esports?
Earlier in the show, and we had this conversation about how to sort of define it, and I know that on another forum that I visit, we had pages and pages about how to define esports journalism. It is a vague term. I can really, what I can do is tell you exactly what I want to do, but to keep it sort of vague, an esports journalist would be someone whose job, Jesus, that gets into the definition of journalism, which is the subject of like a major legal battle ongoing for years in the United States. Like what exactly makes a journalist versus a blogger versus a writer? These are big questions. I can only really with any certainty tell you why what I'm doing would count absolutely as esports journalism. And I think that, some of the stuff that ESFI has done would count in that. Some of the other stuff, I don't think it would. I don't think, some of the, more basic functions of some of these sites really would qualify as journalism. But it's a giant question in such big ways. I've had entire, there are college courses and books and lectures dedicated to this topic. So I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for you, man. If you get more specific, I can try and I don't know.
Basically, everybody knows Carmack as a journalist, and then now in age, it's like there's really no like huge selection of journalists. It's that there's only a select few, and then there's the rest of the unknowns, hoping to make that one article that basically puts them on the next platform of, well, we now know that you're here. It's basically what, like, for example, say for a new starting out journalist, what would you need to do in order to get there?
So what would you need to do as a new starting out journalist to get to where exactly?
Say...
The level of slasher?
You need to say a lot of bullshit. And you had to have been doing it for a long time and make a lot of
Slasher,
friends.
I mean, look, here's the truth about Slasher. Like, I've known Slasher for a little while now, and I've worked with him a lot. Slasher is, you know, he's a good journalist. He's really good at dealing with people. Like, when MLG started firing everyone, he went right out and made GameSpot happen. Like, he personally forged that whole department. They were thinking about it. He made it happen. And that sort of thing is really indicative of the way he's done his career. And I know it doesn't give you, like, journalism tips, but at the end of the day, if you want to be a journalist, it's really all about going out and making it happen. People always ask, how do I get into esports? Everyone always answers, volunteer. Make it happen. Well, this is another version of that. If you want to be a legitimate esports journalist, I mean, the way I started was I started blogging on Team Liquid. Team Liquid liked what I did. They picked me up to be a staff writer. Once I had Team Liquid on my resume, I was able to go to SK, ESFI. They started flying me out, and I built it up over time. It's not an instant thing. Journalism never is, because you have to build up so much, especially because in traditional journalism, you'll have an entire organization to help you build up the experience and, most importantly, the connections and the know-how. Here, you have to build it up really by hand, but the idea is get working, build it up, make it happen. I couldn't get any vaguer than that. That sounds like something to be put on, like, a coffee cup or something, but the truth is, like, that's why Slasher's at the level he's at. Slasher's really good at dealing with people and getting his way in this industry.
Well, he gets things done. There's no doubt about it.
He gets things done, and no one can take that away from him, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right,
JP.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the theme that we always have in this show, which is, you know, A, work hard, B, just do it. You know, whatever it is.
We must be doing something right, because there is a shit ton of people streaming right now. Players. we must be putting the word out there, so you got to just get out there and do it. I mean, there's a crap ton of people streaming right now.
Well, you know, it's like we were talking before, John. Like, eventually we'll probably, you know, revisit switching, you know, times. I know, but you know, I think for now, though, you know, I know we all have schedule issues, so keep working at it. But any other questions you see, John, in the chat? That's or even you, Pat? That's, let's see, get to here.
Come on, people. Ask some questions. Ask some hard-hitting questions. This is your opportunity right now.
Exactly. You can call in too, guys. I guess our normal caller Kurt isn't around today.
Apparently, Chobo, did you play Call of Duty?
No, they're talking about Ted Sang, Adi, who was a Call of Duty guy, and he worked with the SFI for a while. I think because the conversation started because people were sort of naming who they would call an esports journalist in recent-ish years, and he was brought up. I did not play Call of Duty. Counter-Strike man myself.
You were a Counter-Strike guy?
Yeah.
So you remember Gottfried?
Yeah, totally. And I was one of these struggling Cal O up to Cal M back when Cal M was before Cal P. I was one of those guys struggling in those leagues perpetually until I just started to hate the Counter-Strike community because I remember Gottfried well enough to remember how toxic a community that was. You know, you talk about Reddit. I mean, Jesus, the Gottfried forums.
So I got a question then. What was your opinion on the journalistic value of Gottfried?
Well, this is something that we actually talked about earlier in the show because someone asked, do we need just one really good journalistic outlet in esports right now? And I said no. And the example you can give is Godfrey, because no matter how big and quote unquote powerful it got, no matter how many connections it had, it still got pushed around all the time. Like that's the big thing when you think about Godfrey. At least me personally, the battles it had with Angel and how many battles it lost with Angel, and how many times they didn't say really important things because they would be banned from an event, or Angel would just flip out in various ways. So I mean, Godfrey sort of, I don't know, did their best, I guess. But I know I've talked to Midway, and he has a lot of regrets about it.
Oh, he does?
Yes.
That's curious.
Well, maybe you talked to Midway at a different time and he said something else. But
you got to remember, I worked with Midway for about 9 months at National ESL.
Ah, okay. Well, when I was interviewing,
came up a lot.
No,
that's good. I mean, it's good to hear that I'm sure he did have some regrets. Actually, I do know for a fact that he did mention sometimes that he wished he would have exposed some of those things that Angel was doing. But again, they were afraid that their business model would just be eaten up by something,
Yeah, because CPL was the only game in town in a lot of ways, and Angel Munoz was, this just sort of, Kim Jong-il of esports in his own little way. And so in that he was the man on top, and he had his, from what I hear, he had his own little problems upstairs and would really flip out with the temper. Mm-hmm. And you talk about MLG playing a hardball with PR sometimes. Obviously, CPL did that. I mean, when you talk about bad guys in esports, the person everyone's compared to is Angel, really. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody did ask, somebody made a comment real quick, and I just want to say something. They're talking about the ESPN of esports, which is odd because I've always called ESFI the ESPN of esports, and I still think they're doing things a lot better than what we've seen in a long time. When people look back and they say, what was the news hub for such and such, Gotfrag obviously was the news hub for Counter-Strike. And what ESFI is doing today that I haven't seen in the 10 years that I've been in esports is they are offering up at least a higher level of journalistic value than maybe what was in the past. And they are trying to be the ESPN of esports. Now people are going to say, well, they're connected to so-and-so and this person used to work. You know what? There's no... Brent would have to be an evil guy to purposely have people working with him that would purposely spin stories. If he feels like he's going to get blackballed from a story, I guarantee he just doesn't put it out there. But ESFI doesn't appear to me to be doing some of that. I mean, they don't appear to me to be slanted, or they just have writers that have a little bit less experience in journalism than other writers. But I think overall ESFI is trying their best to be that independent news source.
Pat, what are your thoughts on potential for a news site, or just, I don't know, any kind of form of TMZ-like news, or
what are my thoughts about it?
Yeah, I mean,
depressed, sad, anxious. I don't know. TMZ. I mean, if you're talking about TMZ in the positive sense, in that they'll put shit out there that no one else will. Okay. But then if you take TMZ from the whole thing, is that they put shit out there, personal stuff, like vindictive stuff. They enjoy hurting people. If you ever watch 5 seconds of the show, the whole show is basically about laughing at people. There's nothing constructive about it. And so I really wouldn't take that as a model at all. I would say that yes, more openness. There's a lot of work that could be done in that direction, but TMZ is not the model for esports.
Okay.
No, it's not a model, but I bet somebody offers it up, and I guarantee you'll get a shit ton of people that read it.
Who's going to offer it up that can actually provide, back it up with the kind of content that TMZ does?
Probably not at that level by any means. I mean, there's a lot of things that we do in esports that we think are great, but compared to more established businesses or models, they're not even close. But I guarantee somebody wants to put that out there. I mean, there's people that think that what Too Good does is TMZ style reporting. I don't see it that way, but
No, it's not at all like that. I don't think.
yeah, I don't know. If somebody's going to do it, they'll take a chance and put it out there.
There's just not enough content.
No, I don't think there is enough content.
Yeah. To do
and the reason there is that is because, especially in StarCraft, we have about 0 personalities. We have like 3 personalities in StarCraft, so you're not going to get a lot of stories. I mean, in the 2 years that I've been, more heavily involved in StarCraft, like there's been, I can count on one hand the number of like TMZ style stories that there would be. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not others going on, but the ones that were exposed, I could count. There was about 5 of them.
I don't think someone could really make a successful business off of getting pictures of Idra dancing with Julia after MLG. Like that, like that's what TMZ does. They say, here, look at this embarrassing photo. Here, look at this personal life. And
yeah, some Mia Rose picture or something like that. Somebody posted
like
Mia
that's
Rose.
cool. That happens, and you can get a nice bunch of hits on a given day. But man, it's a stretch of the imagination for me to imagine someone really getting a sustainable supply. Imagine
the crew that they'd have to have. Imagine the number of people that they'd have to have on the inside to try to get all this information and pictures and things. I mean, a big wall of text is not going to interest people. They want to see videos and things like that. And
a really vivid description of someone being drunk.
I mean, look at the StarCraft 2 personalities. There aren't really any.
Dude, reality show with Stefano would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, now that would be interesting because he has
reality shows would be interesting, and I think that it's only a matter of time before we'll see something like that. I think, but that's different from TMZ, which is like predatory by nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, if you did all of esports, if you embodied all of the games and different things that were going on, I suppose you could. I mean, you could get a shit ton of information from Team Solomid. I mean, you could dedicate a whole TMZ page to that.
That's true, actually.
But I just couldn't imagine the number of people that it would take to get all of that information. And then again, the pitchforks would come out, or the people would be claiming, you don't have any evidence. I mean, people get so serious and wrapped up in stuff. It's like, just let it be what it is. I mean, as much as I can't stand, I know. As much as I can't stand Reddit, it's like a train wreck. I'm just sitting there reading every comment. I'm like, oh my God, I'm seriously reading this. And then before I know it, I've wasted 3 hours of my day. And my brain is literally just melted. And I feel like I've lost brain cells from reading it. But I continue to read it. I think it's stupid that people tune into some of the dumb shows that people are just sitting around drinking and talking about, their weekend or stuff. But people do that. It's like turning into Jersey Shore. And people do that.
People in chat, I think in general, are like, they're sort of dismissive of the idea of a reality show. But let me ask you, what's the difference between a reality show and a documentary? It's really just subjective. Is one good? Is one bad? Is one done with real purpose, constructively, maybe some journalism in there? Is one just shit? So when I say reality show, I say it with all optimism that it would be closer to something you might call a documentary, but who knows?
Right, just more of an in-the-life type of thing. More so than people are saying Ultimate Gaming here. Not that type of reality show. That's like...
No, that shit was ridiculous.
That's...
Although, on the bright side of that, I don't know if you guys were around StarCraft when that happened, but the bright side of that is that when that happened, In Control became a gay icon, and I will forever love WCG Ultimate Gamer for that. He became a big star in the bear community, and so for that,
oh my God.
Love it.
I actually did not realize that, but yeah, watching In Control play DDR, I think might get that reaction for sure.
Now that's a personality. There's a personality. I mean, he's definitely a personality. You could probably get lots of fun stuff from him. I mean, look at all the people that read the Team Liquid thread about his wedding. It made me sick to my stomach, but it is what it is,
That wedding is a perfect example of esports. And as much as sick as it makes you, John, I actually think a piece like that, if obviously it's Jeff and Anna's special occasion, so absolutely don't expect them to do anything like that. But if they did, which I've heard that they have thought about it, if they made it just kind of a streamed thing, I mean that's huge. I actually think that's a huge thing for.
I streamed my wedding 8 years ago.
Nobody gives a shit about you, though, dude.
I know.
I mean, it's like, but
my clan buddies were like, "Are you kidding me?" I mean, back then it was streaming. It was like what would have been the resolution you would have been watching at? Like pixels? Would have been like just big.
Can someone link me to the wedding thread?
Oh,
that you're referring to that maybe you used to say?
It's old. But
yeah, it's really old.
I mean, listen, I had to be honest. It made me sick just to think that they would get a 100-page, comments about their wedding or whatever the number it was is huge, and I guess I'm just jealous. I'm a little jealous because here I'm putting all this time in to put these tournaments towards the community, go out and try to get sponsors and so that we can pay the players and bring the community competition, which in my opinion is what will build esports. Not these weddings, not the stories about Stefano getting drunk. That stuff's just kind of like a side note, like that's extra, that's bonus material. We need to build it. So here I am. I'm just a little jealous. He gets 100 pages about his wedding and I can barely pull in 2 pages about some tournament with 8 top players. It's like it's just ridiculous. But it is what it is. And I have to accept that.
Yeah, I mean you're talking about core kind of content versus more of the culture. I don't know. It's more of a culture type of thing. I think when you talk about folks, reading enjoying that, being captivated by that, right? And
no, I think it's great, and to be honest with you, it's something that we should probably do as organizations that run events. We should do a lot better at which is connecting to the players and finding a personal story about the players and not making it so much about they're from this team, they're this race, this is their name, and here's a picture of them. You know what I mean? Connecting more with the players and getting that that human side of them, I think it does draw in more people, and I think some of that stuff's good, but like I said, it's just sometimes frustrating that some of the just Jersey Shores type shit gets 15 pages of comments to every one of my 1 page of some event that I'm running. I'm just jelly.
Hey, so Cameron Carson said he sent you a question. Pat, is it a good question or?
Right. He said, what kind of news am I going to focus on with my show? So stuff like this, stuff that I've talked about, I have a bunch of ideas, and, basically, first of all, I want to talk about the sponsorship game and how it's played in the way that we've talked about in terms of how the relationship between sponsors and teams and organizations, what the result of that is, how that affects esports. I mean, that's a whole bucket of worms. I want to talk about the relationship between, it may be a little too self-referential, but the relationship between journalists and these major organizations. I want to talk about specific instances of this relationship, specific anecdotes about the way journalists have to tread lightly, how these PR departments deal with these journalists, and really sort of say, listen, this is what's happening right now. This is why esports journalism is the way it is, and this is why there's this opaqueness or this sort of, lead wall which you can't see through towards the back scenes, behind the scenes of esports journalism. I mean, there's a whole list of it, and I sort of hesitate to give like a 10 or 20 story list just because these are the type of things that I really want to investigate. Like, part of the whole reason I want to be able to get this money is that so I can set down time and really put in the work before just hyping it and saying, look, here's some good like clickbait, please click it, give me money. But I mean, I can go find my document with a bunch of lists, the list of the stories, that if that's what we want. But those are 2 that I want to start off with. Maybe there are a bunch of people who are really important to the scene and to the industry, and who have really made a huge impact on the industry, but who I feel really never got time in the spotlight. And that's partially for a lot of reasons, but many of them just don't want to be in the spotlight. And I'd like to, against their will, sort of put them there, not to make it a celebrity thing, not to make it a Jersey Shore thing, but to say, this is how you succeed in esports, this is why we're at where we're at, because this person did this thing, this is what they were thinking. And I apologize for all the vagaries, but again, like, I'm hesitant to give out a 20 story long list, but stuff like that. And I mean, GESL obviously would have been something, or maybe something in the future that I'm going to look into. Things that basically happen. This is going to be an industry-focused show, in that I'm not going to be giving you recaps of what happened last night in GSL. That's not the way it's going. I'm not going to be hard hitting. It's never going to be hard hitting analysis of the balance in games X, Y, and Z. This is going to be, here's the people in the industry, here's the state of the industry, what's happening, why is it happening, let's get some transparency, let's get some questions answered, let's get some real live facts and important anecdotes out there so that people have a truer sense of why the wheels turn in the esports industry.
All right, sounds good, man. Keep getting more excited about it every time we get another question regarding it. So, how long do you think it'll take? I mean, how long do you think it'll be, Pressure, if you get the amount of funding that you're hoping for?
If I get the funding right now, I'm going to do 10 full episodes. Think 60 minutes where they do like a full hour on a single topic sometimes, although most of the time it's broken out depending on the topic. I would do 10 full episodes on a single topic, probably, or if I split it up, it would still be 10 episodes, but maybe 2 topics in an episode, depending on how the story works out. I don't want to stretch a story longer than it needs to be. I don't want to talk for 60 minutes about something that I don't need to. So, but 10 full episodes, put out on a regular basis. I'm sort of hesitant to say exactly the basis right now because I'm still working that out, and also, I mean, that's just a matter of how things work out with funding and with the stories and things like that, but 10 episodes.
All right. Sounds good.
Well, you're 1/6 the way there right now, so you're doing good.
That's awesome.
Got over
$1,000
$1,000.
and
it's really good.
What is that? That's like 4 hours.
Yeah,
Pretty
it's
damn
really good.
That's pretty darn good.
Well, but keep in mind it's not going to keep at this pace. So probably anyway. I mean, It's funny because I do have people who said like I'll donate a lot of money, and I guess this is the project where I find out who's blowing smoke up my ass and who's not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the great thing about Kickstarter, guys, is that once you meet that goal, it just keeps going. Like you can continue like a lot of these projects have. It has a percentage, right? And usually when you reach 100%, it turns green. But then, some of these projects are like 1,000% because they've raised, it's like, 10x of what they were expecting. So
just so people are aware, as far as we know, I mean, as far as I know, because we've been talking about Kickstarter now for a month or so, trying to get ours set up, is that if you don't meet the goal,
yes.
you get none. You get nothing.
Yeah. The money comes back to.
It's not this kind of thing isn't worth doing for less money than this.
So if we want to see, oh really? I'll have to remember that. So if we want to see this be a success, we are going to have to continue to contribute to it and try to help him get to that point and raise it to get to that goal, because otherwise he gets nothing and then he's stuck having to start over. So
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, everybody gets their money back if it doesn't reach the goal. So
when I say it's not worth it, I mean for me personally,
right?
Like in my context, obviously.
Yeah, I mean ours is not going to be quite as high as yours. I mean, we'd love to get it to that point, but we're going to be very specific in how we do it. I'll probably talk next Tuesday, actually, Chris.
Okay.
So we'll have Kickstarter conversations 2 days, two shows in a row.
Awesome.
And that's totally understandable because you guys have an organization and a business around it, so around whatever you've got or whatever you're working. So this is sort of it.